Welcome to our next lesson in Kingdom Parables. Today is going to be the last lesson in this series. Today we're going to talk about the parable of the net. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was thrown into the sea and gathered fish of every kind. When it was full, men drew it ashore and sat down and sorted the good into containers, but threw away the bad. So it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come out and separate the evil from the righteous and throw them into the fiery furnace. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now hopefully you noticed that this parable sounds very similar to wheat and the weeds. So there's a gathering happen, and there's a sorting that happens, and then there's good and there's bad. There's wheat, there's weeds. So what's this about? So let's start with the surface level reading of this verse. There's good fish, there's bad fish. What makes good fish good? What makes bad fish bad? So is the good based on moral qualities and moral behavior versus the bad, which would be immoral behavior? Now, the challenge with that is the further you dig into this mindset or this interpretation, you start asking questions. What makes someone good? What makes someone bad? We can answer by saying Jesus then determines what is good, what is bad. Okay, all right. Then you go another layer deep and you go, what does Jesus say is good and what does Jesus say is bad? Then we go through the list of things Jesus says is good, a list of things Jesus says is bad. And they are lists in the Bible, right? Galatians 5:19 to 21, you can read it on your own. Jesus gives us the Sermon on the Mount, so again, we can look at that as a quote-unquote list and say, there we go, you do this, that's good. You don't do this, then you're bad. But is that what Jesus means? Now you take that thinking a step further. Now you start thinking about frequency and quality. What does that mean? Well, how long will you do the good thing for, and how well you will do the good thing? For example, let's look at Matthew 5 verse 27. Jesus says, you've heard it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you, everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So there we go. The good fish will not commit adultery by not lusting. The bad fish will. Okay, now let's work this through. So let's say the good fish do not lust. Now for how long should we not lust? 1 week? 10 years? Till the day we die? Is that even possible? Now we're starting to get into some trouble, right? So does that mean each time we lust, we become bad fish? Now that could create insecure anxiety, right? We always are like, ooh, am I good fish? Am I a bad fish? And then also the matter of quality. In other words, what does that mean to lust after someone? Let's say you take a glimpse for like a second and you look away. Is that second too long of a glimpse? Should it be microsecond? Should it be nanosecond? What about picosecond? You get the picture, right? We get into all kinds of trouble when we start to think in these terms. But then what in the world does Jesus mean? Good fish, bad fish. So with all of that, let's turn to Jeremiah 16. I encourage you to read the whole chapter, but I'll pick up the reading in verse 14. We're going to read from 14 to 21. Therefore, behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when it shall no longer be said, as the Lord lives, who brought up the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But, as the Lord lives, who brought up the people of Israel out of the north country, and out of all the countries where he had driven them. For I will bring them back to their own land that I gave to their fathers. So this is speaking of exile and return from exile. Now let's continue in verse 16. Behold, I'm sending for many fishers, declares the Lord, and they shall catch them. And afterward I will send for many hunters, they shall hunt them from every mountain, every hill, and out of the clefts of the rocks. For my eyes are on all their ways, they are not hidden from me, nor is their iniquity concealed from my eyes. But first I will doubly repay their iniquity and their sin, because they have polluted my land with the carcasses of their detestable idols, and have filled my inheritance with their abominations. O Lord, my strength and my stronghold, my refuge in the day of trouble, to you shall the nations come from the ends of the earth and say, our fathers have inherited nothing but lies, worthless things in which there is no profit. Can I make for himself gods? Such are not gods. Therefore, behold, I will make them know, this once I will make them know my power and my might, and they shall know that my name is the Lord. So here we see this imagery of exile, return from exile, and the sending out of fishers who will then gather God's people, presumably in their nets. Now the language is vague here, I think, intentionally, because who is being gathered is not very clear. Are these those obedient to God, or are these disobedient to God? There's some ambiguity here. But the restoration will be complete. Now going back to Matthew 13, the parable of the net, who is the good, who is the bad? The answer is actually this is about God's covenant people and those who are faithful to God's covenant, those who are not. This is not moral works righteousness at all. This isn't following a bunch of lists at all. This is about being in covenant faithful relationship with God, or not being covenant faithful relationship with God. Again, as we've seen in previous videos, it's so easy to judge good fish, bad fish. Or they're the bad fish over there, or hey, we're the good fish over here. The reality is Jesus is calling his covenant family to humbly explore and examine our covenant faithfulness to the King and to the kingdom way, to his kingdom way. Now, obviously, that would lead to living a lifestyle that would be seen as moral, right? But this is where it gets interesting. It's whose morality? It's not the world's morality, but it's the King's morality, which goes back to the lifestyle of King Jesus' kingdom way, which is highlighted in the Sermon on the Mount. So we're in covenant partnership with the King, humbly living out his kingdom way, or not. So as we close out, have this conversation with your campus community. Is your campus community faithful to King Jesus' covenant? Whose standard of morality does your campus community hold to? Is it King Jesus' kingdom, or something else, or someone else? How does your community handle when someone falls short of covenant faithfulness to the King? Because even that method is prescribed by the King, right? Do we follow his message and his method even when it comes to helping someone in your community who is falling short of the King's covenant standard? There's so much more to talk about. Parables are amazing. I hope you study these things out, because Jesus uses these parables to get into our very innermost being, to challenge our very ideas and images and who we are as in a very core being, and what is our hope, and what is Jesus doing in and through his death and resurrection in the world today. Love to hear feedback from you. Thank you again, and God bless you.